Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to go through the 9708 paper 31 for May-June 2025 exam. Without much ado, let's go to question 1, which is asking what is the equimarginal principle? So A, as consumption of a product increases, the satisfaction from consumption of the product decreases by an equal amount. No. Well, if you don't know what the equimarginal principle means, I'm just going to write here the formula. So marginal utility of A divided by price of A equals to marginal utility of the second product, let's call it B, over price of B. So this needs to be equal for that to have taken place. Okay, so B, consumers maximize their utility where marginal valuation for each product consumed is the same. This one looks okay. The total satisfaction received by consumers from consumption of a product is constant. The marginal utility derived by consumers from consumption of one more unit, that's not true. So correct answer there is B. Let's move on to question 2. The diagram shows the costs and revenue curves for a natural monopoly. Yeah, so we know this is a natural monopoly because it has a downward sloping AC curve, as you can see there. So what's the question? Which statement is correct? Okay, P2 and Q2. So here, okay, we'll achieve both allocative and productive efficiency. So we are unable to achieve productive efficiency here because this is not the lowest point on the AC curve. Because this curve is still going down. P2 and Q1. So P2 and Q1, maybe there. We'll achieve productive efficiency but not allocative efficiency. Again, we cannot achieve productive efficiency if you're not producing on the lowest point on the AC curve. So P3 and Q3 will achieve allocative efficiency. Okay, so when price equals MC, so this is your price. So we can achieve, yes, we can achieve that, but not productive efficiency. This one looks true. P3 and Q3 will achieve both. No, will not achieve both because again that's not the lowest point on the AC curve. So the correct answer here will be C. Let's move to question 4. What would not affect the budget line of an individual consumer? The individual's preference for various goods. Yeah. Level of income tax. This will affect the amount of income they have and therefore will affect the budget line. So this one will affect. The money prices of goods, this one will also affect the position of the budget line. The income earned, so the amount will also affect. So for question 3, the individual preference for various goods will not affect the budget line. Let's move on to question 4. The diagram shows the marginal private costs and the marginal private benefits of a product. Consumers initially estimate the marginal private costs are MPC1 and the marginal private benefits are MPB1. So the consumer is right here at that point. What is the impact on the market demand for the product if the consumer realizes that they have underestimated MPC of buying the product but not MPB? So if they've underestimated this, then it means the cost is higher. So we're going to move to that point and we're not going to move to another point because the other one, the MPB, is fine. So okay, what is the impact on the market demand? So I think we're going to move from Q1 to Q3. So this one and that one. So the consumer was supposed to consume there, but they're consuming there. So it's going to be a reduction. So it's going to be under consumed. The consumer is going to, okay, what is the impact of the market demand for the product if the consumer realizes that they have underestimated the MPC of buying the product but not the MPB? So the benefit is more. So this consumer most likely is going to overconsume this product. And so I'm going to go for 4. I'm going to go with C. Okay, What is an internal economy of scale? So this is what happens to the company. Efficient local transport networks. This one is external. Improved access to spare parts as a result of industry growth. Again, this is external. Lower risks from supplying a wider range of customers. This could be internal. Training of skilled labor at a college financed. The training of skilled labor at a college financed by local firms. This one is also external. So for 5, I'm going to go with C. All right, let's go on to question 6. The diagram shows the cost and revenue for a monopoly. Which level of output would produce a normal profit? So normal profit is where AC is going to be meeting AR, and that will be that point there, point D. So where AC meets AR. Let's go to 7. Which combination of statements about small farms and large farms is most likely to be correct? Small farms are more common in manufacturing than in services. Large farms face high barriers to exit. This one doesn't really say it's the truth. All the truth are numerous more than large farms. Do not experience diseconomies of scale. So this one is gonna kick that out. Can do well when each item produced is different. Okay. May arise from internal growth or merger. So this one is also okay. Cannot have any monopoly power. So they can. This one is wrong. Cannot earn supernormal profit. So they can. This one is also wrong. So for 7, let's go with C. All right, let's go to question 8. Good X is a popular product that creates a negative externality when it is consumed. The government wants to reduce the consumption of good X significantly. Under which circumstances is the government most likely to meet its aim? So the government here has to use a tax, not a subsidy, and PED must be elastic. So that means it has to be more than 1. So for 8, C is the best option there. Okay. A government introduces tradable pollution permits to reduce pollution. What is an advantage of this scheme? It allows consumers to determine the optimal pollution level. No. It can provide rewards for firms to reduce pollution. Yeah, that's true. It enables the government to raise revenue from resale of permits. So once the government sells the pollution permit, it cannot make any more revenue from resale. So this one is not true. It uses the market system with no administrative cost. No. So the correct answer here is B. Because firms will be able to sell the pollution permits that they do not use to other firms who want to continue the pollution. All right, let's move on to question 10. To reduce traffic congestion, a government built a new highway. A majority of the citizens are opposed to this. Some citizens responded by switching from public transport to private cars. What is this caused car journeys to take longer? What can be concluded about government failure in this case? It occurred because I think the government had a good intention here, only that it didn't have the results that so created a problem, but the intention of the government was good because they wanted to reduce traffic congestion. It occurred because the government's opportunity costs were not considered. I think no. It occurred because the wishes of majority of citizens were ignored. In most decisions the government make, they look at what is called cost benefit and not wishes. It occurred because the results were unintended. Yeah, this is the one I was talking about. It occurred from over-reliance on market system. That one is also out. So for 10, let's go with C. Let's move on to 11. What could result in an individual being caught in the poverty trap if their income increases? So the income increases, maybe they enter into a tax bracket where they are now being taxed, and therefore they end up in the poverty trap. So if the minimum wage is changed, this one I'm not so sure. Benefit payments are means tested. So this means that before you receive a benefit, now they have to look at your income and your data, and this could be it. Subsidized housing payments for low-income earners are increased. yeah, this will actually help this person. If the income is increased and they increase the subsidized housing payments, they can benefit. So this one, low, the income level at which income tax is first paid is increased. So this one will also do the same thing as the other three. So the correct answer for 11 will be B. Okay, let's move on to 12. I'm going to make this smaller so that you can see the whole graph. The diagram shows the impact on the labor market of the introduction of a minimum wage. So the minimum wage has been introduced here, that's above the equilibrium, which is very good. What do distances x, y, and yz represent? So xy, this is people who will lose their jobs. So these ones will lose their jobs. And these ones will be wanting to join the market but won't be able. So want to join but won't be able. Okay, so XY, existing workers made redundant, so this 2. And then for the second part is unemployed new entrant, so that's B. All right, let's move on to 13. So what is an example of nudge theory as applied in prevention of tax evasion? Okay, so nudge theory basically will be giving people information to try and convince them to do something. So this is an example of nudge theory is the images that you have on cigarette packets that show the kind of diseases you can get if you smoke, and that's just nudge theory telling you not to smoke. That's a very good example of nudge theory. Now let's go through the answers. Employing an extensive administrative, no, that's not nudge theory, that's false. Imposing heavy penalties, again, that's false. Providing information to taxpayers about the undesirable effects of tax evasion, this could be it. Requiring employers to inform the tax authority, again, that one is cannot be the correct one. So for 13, nudge theory would be C. Let's go on to 14. The diagram shows the demand for and supply of labor. Which two areas represent economic rent? For this question here, you have to remember what transfer earnings are. And this one will be, transfer earnings would be the area under supply curve. So under the supply curve. And economic rent would be the area above. So this would be economic rent. And probably this would be economic rent. This one and this one are below the supply curve. So this and this will make up transfer earnings. And this will make up economic rent. So for 14, it's going to be B. Let's go to 15. In an economy with no government sector or foreign trade, the MPC is 0.6. If the equilibrium level of national income is 10,000 and the full employment level of national income is 15,000 million, so this is 15 billion, by how much would the investment have to increase to achieve full employment? This one looks like a question on the multiplier. And you know that the multiplier works with this formula, 1 divided by 1 minus MPC. And so our MPC here is 0.6, so our multiplier will be 1 over 1 minus 0.6, which is the same as 1 over 0.4, which will give us, I'm going to just do that with a calculator in a minute, 1 divide 0.4. So it comes 2.5. And so what we are looking at here, we are looking for a way that we can invest 2 billion, so 2,000 million, because this is going to be multiplied with this multiplier to give us 5,000, and then we're going to move from that to that. And so yeah, so if we can get that 2,000 million, which is is it 2 billion? Yeah, 2 billion. With the multiplier, we can go to 15 billion. All right, let's move on to 16. What is a definition of hysteresis unemployment? This is basically where people get unemployed and then they stay unemployed and eventually lose their skills. So people who become temporarily, it's not temporary, it's for a long time. People who become unemployed when there's a recession, but who find an employment. So this one is out, because they don't find jobs later. People who become unemployed for a long period of time due to a loss of job skills and work. Okay, that one is good. People who become unemployed when established firms close and new firms are created as technology advances. This one is called structural. So this one is not. So let's go to 17. An economy has a positive output gap. So this is a positive output gap, basically is when the economy is producing beyond. So this is your SRS, this is your AD, this is your long run aggregate supply. So it's producing about beyond the, so it's actually stretching resources. This one is also called an inflationary gap, so meaning the prices will be increasing. And so growth, probably growth will be, the growth will be above trend for this particular question. So economic growth will be above trend, and the general prices will probably be rising because it's also called an inflationary gap. So for 17, I think B is the closest to what we are talking about there. What is a factor affecting occupational mobility of labor? This one will be mostly affected by its skills and maybe education. So I'm going to say A for now, but let's go through the other answers. Immigration controls. This will affect geographical mobility of labor. Price of housing also will affect geographical mobility. Transport infrastructure, so those will affect geographical mobility, but A will affect occupational mobility of labor. So basically this is the ability to switch between jobs. Let's move to 19. A country's government decides to set artificially low interest, or they are low and they're artificial. What describes a negative consequence to this country of this policy? So a higher rate of consumer price inflation, this is very possible because borrowing is going to become cheap, consumption is going to increase, and because of that, aid is going to shift to the right, which is going to cause inflation. So a rapid growth in domestic product, this is a good thing, so it's not a negative consequence. An increase in investment, this is also a good thing. A reduction in borrowing by consumers. Consumers are actually going to borrow more at low interest rates. So for 19, I'm going to go with A. Okay, let's move on to 20. According to the quantity theory of money, which combination would result in the greatest level of prices remaining unchanged? All right, so we need to know the formula for quantity theory of money, which says MV. So money supply times velocity equals to price times transactions. The other variation of this formula is MV equals to PY. So this is a variation of the quantity theory of money. But for this particular question, we're going to use this formula here. So they are saying that the general price, so P is remaining constant. So if money supply remains unchanged, transactions must remain unchanged. But if velocity is increasing, then this formula is going to be not valid. Okay, so money supply for B is rising. Money supply is rising. Okay, number of transactions remains unchanged. This one will be wrong because if money supply is rising, number of transactions must also rise. So that one is out. And then let's go to C. Money supply is rising, so 3% here. The number of transactions is rising, so that one is okay. And velocity remains the same. So this one is fine because if this one remains the same and this one remains the same, we're going to have the same answer. So C is correct. And D, if velocity increases, then transaction is going to have to increase. So let's go with C for question 20. All right, let's move on to 21. A government increases its inflation rate target from 3% to 5%. So the inflation target has increased. What is the likely reason for this? I'm thinking unemployment as quickly as I can here because unemployment is a trade-off with inflation. And I'm just going to put a dot here and go through the others. To increase economic sustainability. Probably not. To increase saving. If inflation goes up, people are going to try to buy now instead of buying later when the prices are high. So savings are going to go down. To reduce balance of payment deficit. Probably not. So I'm going to go with D here for 21. To reduce unemployment. Let's go to 22. Okay, what would be a macroeconomic policy objective for government in a developed economy. So the economy is already developed. So we're talking of developed economies here. So let's try A, to improve sustainability. This one is very likely because the economy is developed. To provide public goods. Public goods have already been supplied. We have good roads, we have good hospitals in a developed economy. So this one is out. To reduce the power of trade unions. Here we want trade unions to be very strong so that our employees can get good working conditions and better packages. So this one is not possible in a developed economy. To subsidize the electricity supply industry. In a developed economy, this one will not be a priority. So I'm going to go with A for 22. Let's try 23. An economy is at its natural rate of unemployment. Under which circumstances will an increase in government spending aimed at reducing unemployment be most likely to conflict with the government's objective for low inflation? So the government wants low inflation, and it's going to be increasing spending. So the government is increasing spending. So let's look at the answers. If inflationary expectations are unchanged, this is probably it, because if the people expect the inflation to fall, then unemployment is going to increase because the government wants to reduce unemployment. If labor productivity increases, this is gonna create inflation, and also the I think this factor and this factor are going to offset inflationary pressure. So these ones are going to offset inflationary pressure. So they're going to offset it. So remember, unemployment, this is the one that is most likely to create a conflict. So these ones are not going to create any conflict, and this one is also not going to create any conflict. So for 23, the correct answer is A. Okay, let's move on to 24. An economy imports a large proportion of its raw materials. Its exchange rate depreciates. What's an impact on the external and internal value of money? For sure, what we know here is that the external value of money is going to fall. So I know for sure that the external value of money is going to fall. And because most of its raw materials are imported, the internal value of money is also going to fall. So 24, I'm going to go with D. Let's go to 25. A country's government imposes a tariff on steel imports. So imported steel is going to be expensive, and also the quantity is going to reduce. What is the likely impact of this tariff on the country's economy? It will make the country's steel exports more price competitive. It will make the country's steel exports more price competitive. So because they're not giving them a subsidy, this one is not gonna happen. It will lead to productive efficiency in the country's steel industry. Without competition from abroad, this is likely to happen. There will be an improvement in the country's terms of trade, probably not. There will be a decrease in producer surplus for the country's steel producers. So actually, introduction of this is going to increase the producer surplus. So so it's going to increase the producer surplus, not decrease. So for question 25, B is most likely to be the correct answer. Let's go to 26. Which measurement is not included in the calculation of HDI? Okay, average years of schooling, this one is there. GNI per capita is there. Infant mortality rate, no, but life expectancy at birth is there. So for 26, C is the correct answer there. Let's move on to 27. Okay, let's make this a bit smaller so that we can see the graph. The diagram shows the impact of revaluation of a country's exchange rate on the current account of the balance of payments. Okay, the table gives price elasticity of demand for imports and price elasticity of demand for exports in both the short run and the long run. Which combination of short run and long run elasticity will give the shape shown in the diagram. So in the short run, we expect PED of imports plus PED of exports to be less than 1, and so this is the short run. And in the long run, I expect the same now to be greater than 1. So PED of X to be greater than 1. So looking here, this plus that is 0.4, and here is 0.8, so this one is out. Here it's 0.8, which is less than 1, and this is 1.6. So this one is most likely, and this one is elastic, and elastic also, and this one is elastic, and elastic also. So the correct answer here will be B for that question, 27. Let's move on to 28. What is not a function of the International Monetary Fund? Okay, to encourage exchange rate stability, this one is a function. To provide financial assistance for a country with failed economic policies is a function. To provide funds for a water purifying plant in a developing country, no. To provide loans for countries following a natural disaster, yes. So 28 is going to be C. Let's do the final two questions. The diagram shows the effect of a trade creation if a tariff is removed. So we're there, then we go there. Which area shows the total net gain to the domestic economy? So we know that the gain, total gain, here total gain is going to be V plus W plus X plus. I'm just going to go back there to make sure that plus looks like a plus. So plus X plus Y. So that's the total gain, but they only want the net gain, so this is all the gain. But V is going to be lost. So this is going to be producer surplus lost. So producer surplus that has been lost. And X is going to be government revenue lost. So what will remain with is W and Y. So that will be our net gain, W and Y. So what will remain with this is W, this area and that area there. All right, final question. What is most likely to prevent a developing country from achieving economic development? So it's a developing country, and what can prevent it from achieving economic development? Increase allocation of resources to production of goods that have high income elasticity of demand. Yeah, so this one cannot prevent, so this one is a good one. Increase government legislation for the protection of employment. This one is likely to prevent, because when employment is protected, it means even employees who are not productive cannot be let go. So this one is very likely. So let's put a star there for now. Increase tax allowances on firms investing in research. This one will increase development. The decision of developing countries to increase quotas for goods produced by developing countries. So if they increase the quotas, it means developing countries can export more to developed countries and therefore increase economic development. So for question 30, the correct answer is going to be B. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also don't forget to share the video with your classmates.